Hi, folks. We're going to get started here with our official programming, and Dr. Harrington's going to come over in a minute if we can pull him away. But this is really why we're here, these conversations. It's very, very exciting to be here to welcome you. My name is Patrick Wayte. I run our Center for Health Tech and Innovation, and this is our Health Innovation Pavilion. Excited to be here again with you at the intersection of science and technology. This is where the real magic is happening at the AHA and scientific sessions. You'll see, obviously, a great number of tech companies that are in our Innovators Network. Please talk with them. Several dozen companies, fantastic entrepreneurs and technology solutions across the health continuum. Learn from them, talk with them, share your knowledge. We'd love for you to engage. I'd like to thank, as we get going, my team, the Center for Health Tech and Innovation team, with a particular shout out to our very own Dr. Pat Dunn, who works tirelessly to help us put this together. And of course, our Health Tech Advisory Group, chaired by Dr. Bob Harrington, who's a great leader for us, and all of our Health Tech Advisory members are going to be participating to one degree or another in the tech competition in speaking and panels, and so we're very thrilled to have them guiding us down this pathway. So welcome again, and happy to introduce Dr. Bob Harrington.
Thanks, Patrick, and welcome. And this is pretty amazing that I was being reminded that this is the 8th time that we've been at sessions with the Technology Pavilion. And if you go back and you look at what we've looked at over the years, it's been very different and has evolved. I'd say in the early years, it was pretty straightforward technology. It was a lot of consumer-facing technology for things like wearables and EKG monitoring. But now it really is different. And this is a slide I've been using at our place lately in thinking about the future of academic medicine, thinking about the future of healthcare. It fits really well with what we're trying to accomplish here. Access to state-of-the-art diagnostics and therapeutics. Walk around and meet some of the sponsors about the kind of ways that we can do diagnosis in our patients. Patient-centered clinical research. I think we now have an unprecedented opportunity to treat every patient as a research subject. It's because we're collecting data constantly on those patients, and how do we use that in a most meaningful way? I'm looking at Dr. Peterson in the front row. He and I grew out of the Duke Data Bank for cardiovascular disease, where Dr. Gene Stead had this vision decades ago. Now it's actually possible. Computational biology to enable precision medicine and population health. A couple of key concepts there. Computation and populations. Because now, as health systems, as doctors, as other clinicians, we're not just taking care of the patient in front of us, we're responsible for a population. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that in part by the best computational methods. And I think one of the things that you're going to see at this meeting, if you went to the opening session this morning, the opening session chairperson, she called it back about 5, 6, 7 years ago, that artificial intelligence was the stuff of science fiction, I think was her quote. Today, it's at the center of everything we're doing. And so as you walk around, you're going to learn a lot at this meeting and in this Health Tech Pavilion about data science, and you're going to learn how we use advanced computational methods like artificial intelligence to learn more about the populations we serve and the patients that we're trying to treat. So have a great time. I'm looking forward to asking questions today in the technology competition, and I'll turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Each of us gets one slide to show. This is my one slide. And I guess before I start, I should talk about relationships that influence what I'm going to tell you. There are two important relationships. The first is that my undergraduate degree is in engineering. So I have insatiable enthusiasm for technology and engineering. I'm positive on that side. The second is that for 25 years I've been involved in quality improvement and the development of guidelines. And as an MD, I'm very concerned that the technology we have is applied in an effective, meaningful way. And so we stand at that junction right now. I stand at that junction as I want to speak to you about wearable technology, which Bob Harrington said was, in fact, it's been with us for 8 years. It's still hanging around, which I think is a testimony to its value, and I'll speak to that in a bit. I will say that that's not my only area of interest, that during COVID, we used WeChat in China, in Beijing, to do hybrid cardiac rehab. We were actually working with patients in a FaceTime type mode to conduct cardiac rehab. So although I'll talk about hypertension, which is a really important part of rehab and the leading global risk factor, I'm not focused on that alone. Now on the slide, I tried to show you what I see as the intersection between the two backgrounds, the engineering and the guidelines. Hypertension, as you know, is expected to affect 1.5 billion people in the world by 2025 when we finish this year. 40% to 50% of the US population is hypertensive, has hypertension, and only 20% of them have controlled hypertension. So we have a need to do a better job with hypertension. And now, from our guideline committee, which I'm on in hypertension, we hear that if you make the diagnosis of hypertension, you must do ambulatory or home blood pressure monitoring. That to try to manage blood pressure in the office doesn't work for all the reasons we know. It varies too much. Even the mandated ways of taking blood pressure, sit for 5 minutes, the nurse is not in the room, the legs are not crossed, the cuff is on the arm, not over a jacket. Our patients arrive, they can't find a parking place, they hurry in, the nurse is talking to them, the cuff goes on. So the measurement of blood pressure is not, even in our major institutions, always done correctly. And even if it is, that's a one-point environment. So that's why the new guidelines say that either home blood pressure or ambulatory blood pressure should be used in patients that are diagnosed with hypertension. That's a class 1 recommendation. And then in order to monitor how things are going, home blood pressure is measured. The patients need to be taking their blood pressure and they need to have interaction with the team. So that raises the question, wouldn't it be easier just to put on a watch? That's so much easier. The question is, does it work from an engineering standpoint? And you see here a whole variety now of cuffless blood pressure devices that are available. There's actually a 7th. There's actually been a paper using toilet seats to monitor patients with heart failure for blood pressure and heart rate, published in 2019. So most of these techniques use optical photoplethysmography, OPPG. You can see on the left a sensor either on the finger or potentially be on the watch. We'll say a few words about the new Apple device. They now are using facial video processing to look at pulsatile optical PPG. And you can see easily the oscillometric finger pressing and some more advanced ultrasound and the rings are out there. The problem is none of these have really been validated in a way that makes sense. And the validation standards also have got to be developed. There's work with the Europeans and the United States to try to standardize this, but these devices they generate a lot of data during the day, which is good, but it also has to be processed and handled in a way. The PPG is dependent upon skin tone. There's an issue with atrial fibrillation. The skin tone that varies with different ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, that's an issue. Has that been, obesity can affect the PPG measurement. aortic insufficiency can, and activity can, the movement of the arm. So there are a lot of sensing and approval, validation processes that need to occur before we are really ready. And so I'll leave you with these remarks that I hope you will stay very enthusiastic about the wearable devices, the cuffless devices. You know, we have an Apple device, you'll hear more about that, which has just been approved by the FDA. It does not measure your blood pressure. It's sort of a PPG device that over a month accumulates what is perceived to be blood pressures over 140 and sends an alert to you or your physician. And the sensitivity, the specificity of that's around 48% or so. That means that there are going to be a lot of people that are told that their blood pressure is up that may show up in the doctor's office and say, I'm worried. And the doctor say, you know, shouldn't be worried. So they're going to have to deal with this specificity, sensitivity issue. But at least it's a step forward of making the public more aware of their blood pressure. And now I think we're left with the real benefit and advantage using AI, using neural networks to process the PPG signals in terms of really good, accurate, reliable wearable devices. This year we have 188 abstracts submitted to the Health Innovation. So that's what's happened over 8 years. And I hope that will continue and invite you, as Dr. Harrington did, to browse around, visit the exhibitors, and think about how they may relate to what you're interested in doing. I think we're up for the next speaker.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Welcome to Sessions. My name is AJ Blood. I am a cardiologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, and I am also the co-founder and CEO of AI with Care. And I'll be talking a little bit about taking data into the real world, into practice, and what that looks like from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So I'm a practicing cardiologist at Mass General Brigham or Brigham and Women's up in Boston, and I'm a clinical trialist. So one major challenge that I've faced over the course of the career that I've had is how do we appropriately identify patients for clinical trials? So I created this out of a need. This is a very expensive and time-consuming process, and how do we actually do this more efficiently, more effectively? We've been working on this for years, but really with the advent of large language models, we saw an opportunity to scale this in a way that was really powerful. And so as part of a large collaborative team, we were able to build a tech solution within the Mass General Brigham environment, published here in the New England Journal AI, that showed in a retrospective study how we were able to use this technology to more appropriately, quickly, and cost-effectively identify patients who met protocol criteria for a clinical trial. That's great, and it's always good to start with retrospective data. In academic medicine, we always like to do prospective, blinded, randomized controlled trials, so that's what we did next. So we took a study that we were enrolling in and looked to see if this tool could then, implemented in a prospective blinded RCT, actually make an impact and enroll more people into those clinical trials. And what we showed in a study published in JAMA is that we could do that. The AI group increasing enrollments by about 84% over the study period. And we were really excited about that. I think the next stage of the journey is really important though. How do you get these new tools and technologies out to the people that can benefit from them most? And we were really fortunate to be working collaboratively with a team within Mass General Brigham to be able to bring this tool not only to many of our collaborators and colleagues across the Mass General Brigham environment, but also to many hospitals, health systems, pharmas, and sponsors across the country and across the world. And so what we've really been working on is starting with the evidence, starting with data, and I think as an academic that's so important because as was mentioned in the last talk, the technology is important, the technology is essential, but technology without evidence, without data, and without a way to make an impact, both from an implementation science and an operational standpoint, really kind of stands alone. And being able to build this in a way that can be collaborative, functional, and actually make an impact, both for patients and for providers, is really important to us. So what we've done over the course of the past few years now is turn this into a much more comprehensive tool that can be used in a platform technology by other collaborators, again, across the country and across the world. And we've built that through the lens of a company. And we're, again, conflict disclosure. We're fortunate to also be the co-founder and CEO of AI with Care, which again is looking to take this evidence-based discovery that we've made in an academic environment and take it to many more colleagues and collaborators around the country and around the world to be able to really scale this technology in a way that's powerful. And we really think that being in a place where we can take those evidence-based innovations and discoveries and really take them not just from a conceptual and academic standpoint, but being really part of that team that was able to make that discovery, to publish that discovery, and share that evidence and that work. My first point is I really think that is essential. Health technology is amazing. It evolves at a rapid pace, and sometimes it's tough to make the evidence keep pace with that advance in technology. But for all of the companies out there, all of the innovators out there, I will say in our world, especially in cardiology, the proof is in the evidence, and data-driven solutions are so important and so essential. And so when we were in a position to take this evidence, this data, and these publications and share this work and this opportunity with many other collaborators, we felt very fortunate to be able to do so. And under the lens of this company is how we've been able to take this to many other folks to help patients and help make discoveries faster. And so again, there's so much that goes into this. When you go from creating a new innovation within a health system, oftentimes it's not done in the most sleek, user-friendly, or in a way that is really easy for people to take part in or take part of the new tool. And so what we've done really is focus on that, because to get something out there, again, it's not just about the data, it's not just about the technology, it's about taking that technology, making it possible to integrate other people's data and make it usable in their environment. And I think that is such a tough translation. And a lot of times, those gaps between evidence and practice, we know in clinical practice as cardiologists, is often very wide. But making it easier, both for patients, providers, and teams to accomplish those things is really such an important part of getting these new discoveries to make an impact at a large scale and in a shorter time frame. And so what we've done is really kind of take this technology and try to make it as accessible as we can for hospitals, health systems, researchers, and really take this type of tool, implement it into a clinical trial environment where it's user-friendly, it's streamlined, and we can actually take these innovations and make a difference in the near term. So really excited that the CHTI is leading the charge on that, bringing data and really evidence-based change to a lot of these technologies. Really excited to be a part of that change, bridging academia and the commercial environment and entrepreneurship, and really excited to have this opportunity to speak with you all today at Sessions. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and looking forward to great sessions with you all. Take care.
Well, hello. It's a great honor and privilege to be here. As Bob kicked us off with saying that this is our 8th year, it actually, Center for Health Technology and Innovation, stems back even a few more years before that, so we're on our decade. And it's been a great honor and privilege to work throughout that time period with Patrick, and others at the Heart Association to make this juncture work. Truthfully, when we began the program, it still remains the same in a lot of ways. It was the idea of how do we get innovators, like you just heard, the evidence that will help inform it, and ultimately the caregivers on the other end together in a fashion that would both identify the problems, look for potential novel solutions, and then ultimately how do we integrate those solutions into practice. So with that in mind, I was going to take AI as an example and zoom out a little bit from the entrepreneur's view to those of somebody within a health system, and mine is UT Southwestern. At our center, we struggle with this onslaught of where AI is going and how fast do we adopt it at our own center. On the one hand, we are very aware that it could be practice changing in multiple different ways. On the other hand, just where and what to invest in, what is ready for adoption now versus in the future. So we've developed in our own institution a strategy on AI now that it includes an oversight committees and structures to better assess what that evidence is and look for ways in which we would adopt it, what we call responsibly. We're also working on a regional level, the UT system, realizing that not one institution is going to make this difference, and we're all overwhelmed with the amount that is coming so fast, that we would be better served by working in a larger group. The UT system impressively decided to unite across the 8 academic centers as a part of the UT system into a system called UT Real AI. In that, we are now working to share the best practices that are being developed at each of those institutions, to co-develop technologies as they get ready for prime time, and ultimately partner with technology companies to bring in these best use cases, and then sort of evaluate them across centers that are large academic centers like ourselves and MD Anderson, or very rural areas like UT Tyler, as an example of just sort of testing out what will work where, best, and how. That has been helped by our Texas State Legislature, a rare comment to make, but in this case they were willing to give $25 million to us across our system to try to develop that collaboration and ultimately serve the citizens of Texas in a better way with the development of artificial intelligence. And then finally, on a national level, I've been honored to be a part of the TRAIN initiative, Trustworthy and Responsible AI Network. This is a national network, now has over 60 large health systems across the country devoted to a similar practice of sharing best practices, working with technology companies, developing the responsible use of technology and AI in practice. So welcome talking to any or all of you about some of these activities, and really enjoy the experience around this booth. It's been set up in a fashion that really allows entrepreneurs, academics, those in real practice, and as well as even patients, to try to experience where the future is now. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I am Ritu Thaman, and I am a cardiologist and multimodality imager at UPMC, and I am going to give a few stories to entertain you all. So, does anyone know about Georgia O'Keeffe? She is was a famous artist, and she asked us this thing, which is to really look at something takes time. And so she painted in this way where she wanted people who are really moving very fast, like New Yorkers, to really look deeply. And I apply that to when we look at the PPG signal. That has been around as 100 years. We've known about the curve. We've concentrated on the temporal part of this. How high is it? Where is the temporal resolution, and trying to correlate that with blood pressure. But now we're also in another realm of how do we use this to implement the next generation of use. For example, we just got a PROCORI grant to study hypertension in 25,000 patients at UPMC. How are we going to do that with just blood pressure cuffs? We have to use PPG. But let's look beyond the temporal. Let's look at the morphology. We need to use our eyes, and we need to train the computer to look beyond the obvious. And we are able to do that through something called a transformer. Does everyone know about this paper? This paper has been cited 200,000 times, probably the most cited paper in our time, and certainly in this decade. And it's called Attention is All You Need. The story is this. A bunch of workers at Google got together and wanted to blow up the architecture that we use when we are talking about algorithms. So they had the old algorithm, which was sequential, step by step. That was how we took a cat from a dog, and we differentiated an apple from an orange. But what they did was they brought all these varying views together from different vantage points and applied this attention, self-attention. So rather than just walking sequentially, they put all 8 heads together and they did it simultaneously. And that transformed everything. And that's why they call it the transformer. And there is no wall here, because in their proof, they said that this kind of algorithm will keep on evolving as long as you have computing power. So there is no end. There is no wall. Does everyone recognize the cover from Pink Floyd? Okay. So let's break for a commercial. How many people remember this commercial?
Hey, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter.
Peanut butter on my chocolate.
What? Delicious.
Okay, so I grew up at a time where, this commercial was played often, and the idea is that you're taking 2 very different things, peanut butter and chocolate, but you're putting them together and you're getting something even better, right? And that's a Reese's, and I have eaten plenty of them this Halloween. But that was the next leg of where we went, because another very famous Patrick, called Patrick Lewis, wrote a paper on RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And the idea there was, we're taking the retrieval, think of it as the chocolate, and we're taking the generator, which is the peanut butter, and we're putting it together. Now, people had been thinking about this for a long time. It's not a new concept, but they were the first, he was the first, he was a Brit, who put it together. And what he was able to do with this was really allow the LLM and the transformer to then go out in the world like phoning a friend, but the friend is the whole internet. It is any source of data, and bringing that in. And we were able to go and take an image and then put together both the retrieval, which is the encoder part, and the generation, which then feeds that information and to get the image. Now, as an imager, this is great, right? This definitely revolutionized things, but there's always a but. We did a study looking at echo images, and because this word interoperability comes up over and over and nobody knows exactly how to tackle it. So what we did was create a machine learning model called Echo Map. And then we compared it using data from echo labs across the country, of which Pitt was one. And we compared it to a large language model. And what we found was when you train them on this text, the large language model falls apart. We, as having a very small, narrow machine learning model, were able to get much more precision and much more accuracy. So my question and my feeling to you is that when you go around today and through this meeting and you're talking about innovation, remember that there are disparate ideas that may come together, and remember that just because something is larger doesn't make it more efficient. In fact, we've looked at it in another way. There's another model called segment anything model. As you know, I'm an echocardiographer, and when we look at images that are moving, we have to segment, we have to pick which image is actually the best one to measure the LV or the LA or the RV. And when you compare it to a large model, you're using up so much computing power, it's not tenable. We're not able to do it. So just keep that in mind, that there are 2 sides to the story. And happy to take questions from anyone as you go through this meeting, and certainly at the round table afterwards. Thank you.
It's hard to follow a very dynamic speaker with peanut butter, chocolate, and videos. So fortunately, there were no puppies. So I'm a bit of an odd man out here. I'm a stroke neurologist and a digital health leader in a meeting dominated by cardiology. And so I'm going to take us up one level and think a little bit about picking up really where Dr. Peterson left off. How do we think about the implementation of these models? And how do we need to change the way that we think about implementation and deployment and monitoring of a technology that is constantly evolving? So if you think for a minute about a device that you get that's FDA approved and we're going to use in the cath lab, you expect that catheter is going to behave the same way in every patient on the table, and that you don't have to relearn how to use it every 3 months, and that if you used it on Dr. Peterson on Monday and then used it on the same Dr. Peterson 3 months later, you would expect that it would perform with the same characteristics. But that is not the case for the models we have today, and it will increasingly not be the case as we move from single models to orchestration of multiple models, intermixed with non-artificial intelligence, computational methods, and human reasoning. So, where do I point this? There we go. So I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about responsible governance of AI algorithms, and I want to use the metaphor of buying a car. So if you're going to go and buy a car, just like you're a health system leader, you're going to go buy an algorithm. What would you do? Like, what do we actually do in that model, in that process? So there's a pre-deployment phase. Before you buy the car, you look at the car sticker, which, by the way, is called a Maroney label, interestingly enough, for Senator Maroney, who introduced legislation requiring car dealers and manufacturers to list the actual price and the performance characteristics of cars using objective standards so that consumers would have a better capacity to make rational choices. And that's what a Maroney sticker looks like. And you'll notice it has a bunch of stuff on it. It's got the miles per gallon really big and like the rebate, enormous. But on that card is also safety standards, pollution standards, and a list of features. This is effectively what you want when you're going to buy an algorithm. You want to know how it was trained. You want to know what standards it was evaluated by. Hopefully we'll get to a point where we have a common set of standards across all manufacturers that are agreed upon and regulated so that they can't invent their own standards. But you also want to know what populations was it trained on, which is not something that the car analogy really supports. The second piece is an implementation phase. You need to validate whether or not this model will work in your population, because your population may differ. Your mileage may vary. Your population may be different than the population in which the model was actually built and deployed. That's where the concept of assurance labs comes into play. For small health systems, they may not have the resources to run their own validations. And so an independent sample that is representative of the population of the United States, or maybe even sub-segmented to something that looks like your population, if it works there, that's at least some reassurance it'll work in yours. But I think for those of us who have the resources, nothing is better than validating it in your own population. And that, I would say, is the Consumer Reports approach, right? Ideally, you'd be able to do that test yourself. You'd test drive all those vehicles, you'd see how they handled, but you don't have the ability to do that, and there's something valuable in a large data set of many users who have attempted to validate those claims. And so that's the Consumer Reports piece. And I think that's an incredibly important piece. And for many of us, that has been the anchor and the end of evaluation. We read about the product, we look at the FDA approval, we buy the catheter, we try it in the lab, the interventionalists are happy with it, we move on. And we never go back and revisit. But with these algorithms, we need a post-deployment phase. And that is that we need to monitor both for performance and bias over time. And you could actually argue that bias is a manifestation of performance. We have to manage and monitor performance over time and ensure that it's meeting our goals. We can monitor the performance of the algorithm in the sense of, is it collecting the right data? Is it mechanically, mathematically running properly? And is the output an output that's within the expected range? But there's a second layer of performance management that we need to do, which is does it appear to give similar results across various demographic populations? And are they credible? Now, there are some biological features that will track with demographic features. There are diseases, sickle cell anemia is going to track with largely an African American population. So some of that is appropriate, but we want to make sure, particularly when these algorithms are prioritizing patients for a transplant list or for a clinic appointment, that we are aware of the aspects that the model is using to ensure that fairness is maintained. And so that is what I would argue that third phase. It's the sort of vehicle inspection report. It's going to the dealer every few months to make sure that, you know, the brakes are working the way the brakes should, that the engine isn't leaking any oil, that the car continues to perform in the manner that you would expect, recognizing that models also deteriorate over time. Your car doesn't perform as well in year 7 as it did in year 1, and at a certain point you decide the car needs to be replaced. So an important piece of this last phase is pre-specified criteria for adoption and minimum performance, with a commitment that if the model drifts to a point where it no longer meets those expectations, it is decommissioned, and either a new version of the model is introduced or you replace it entirely with a new model. So I hope that's been a sort of helpful mini journey through this. We are coping with this scenario as we speak. We have a new governance model in place, as I think many of you who work in health systems are living with the consequences of building these models. We've chosen to treat our approach to AI governance really as an augmentation of our approach to digital governance. We have about 900 active applications at Yale. About 10 to 15% as of 6 months ago were AI enabled. I'd be willing to bet it's 30% today. We haven't done the relook. And we have to go back and ask all of our existing vendors whether there's AI in their models now. If there is, we have to put in place a bunch of new security restrictions, data sharing protections, to make sure that we're respecting the privacy of our patients and the intellectual property of our health system. But we also have to, if I do those 3 things on everything, I won't be doing anything else. So we have to have a risk proportionate model that says high risk patient facing clinical apps get this level of evaluation, low risk administrative applications get a much leaner evaluation. And no one that I know of yet has really figured out what does the command and control center of application monitoring actually look like. So we're in a really exciting phase. We have tremendous amounts of discovery. That's incredible. It's a huge pipeline. Now we have to figure out how does that translate into the applications that will bring value. There are, I don't know what, 1 million apps in the App Store, and you probably have 50 on your phone, and of those you probably use 10. So how do we figure out the mechanism for narrowing that funnel to a place where we're bringing real value and not just driving up the cost of care again for the same outcomes? So thank you very much. Have a great time at the session.
Thank you to all the great opening session speakers, and don't go away because they're going to be right here at table 1 and table 2, and you can continue the conversation with Dr. Harrington and Dr. Thaman over here at table 1, and Dr. Peterson and Dr. Schwam at table 2. So ask questions, bring it on. And also at 11:30 we kick off our health tech competition, so you won't want to miss that.